Look at the moon.
Oh my god, this is definitely not normal.
We know that we were downgraded with one bureau. There's going to be long-term economic consequences, but we know that there's billions of dollars of damage because for the first time, people are questioning whether or not the United States will pay their bills. And so these things, these political games have long-term risks. So I want to spend the rest of my time, this is an area that I know you have a background in, and it's going to be absolutely essential that we're working in partnership to address the challenges, the opportunities and challenges that AI poses for this country, and specifically for our financial system. And you know, in the morning of May 22nd this year, an AI-generated image of an explosion near the Pentagon spread widely throughout social media. Immediately, the stock market dipped, and we saw a significant decline. We were able to recover when we were able to confirm that that was in fact fake. But we know that these are challenges that we're going to have to address together. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to enter the Bloomberg News article, How Fake AI Photo of a Pentagon Blast Went Viral and Briefly Spooked Stocks, into the record.
Without objection.
And so AI has the potential to significantly impact our financial system and our capital markets and our banking system. And this needs to be addressed at every level on how we can mitigate against some of the negative consequences. I'm proud to be joining my colleague and friend in introducing a bill to examine how artificial intelligence will impact the financial sector and how we need to regulate this. So I want to hear from you, though, on what we can be doing, what you recommend that we do to address the challenges that AI poses in the future.
One is, I think it's great opportunities. It's probably going to drive productivity and so forth. But in the financial sector, I do think that there's risk of deep fakes. Look, fraud is fraud. Even if you're using artificial intelligence, there's usually some human behind it. But that's a real challenge to focus on.
All right, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlewoman from California, Mrs. Kim, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman Gensler, thanks for being with us today. I am concerned that the SEC, under your leadership, has not carefully considered the aggregate costs of and overlapping nature of your proposed rules and regulations. And as you heard, there is an erratic pace of your proposals. And I want to paraphrase your own words. These erratic pace of your proposals undermines the finest capital markets in the world. And each proposed rulemaking, now over 50, since the spring of 2021, will make it more costly for small businesses to raise capital in the markets and difficult for hardworking investors in my district to benefit from gains in the markets and save for retirement. And I remember when you came before our committee early this year, you said that the SEC's hardcore proposal would level the playing field for my constituents. But I completely disagree with that notion, and I urge you to please revisit the swing pricing and hardcore proposal. I know some of my colleagues across the aisle also raised this issue. So please tell me, how would the hard close proposal level the playing field for my constituents in Southern California when you're proposing a hard close at 4 p.m. in Eastern Time? It is 1 p.m. Pacific Time. So could you answer that?
So again, what we're trying to address is to ensure that when somebody redeems from a mutual fund, they don't leave everybody else in that mutual fund with losses or what's called dilution. I would say, given the clock, right now, anybody in your district already has to put their redemption order in at 1 o'clock.
Right.
We're not changing that.
Let me reclaim, and I want to tell you that I'm specifically talking about my constituents being put at a competitive disadvantage compared to someone operating Eastern time. So you don't believe that a fund or an investor in California would be put at a disadvantage when they have to stop trading at 1 p.m. Pacific time, whether it's mutual funds or whatever that you're talking about?
I'm just observing currently, because the New York Stock Exchange and the stock exchange is closed by 4 East Coast time, and mutual funds redemptions are by 4 o'clock. We're not changing that. That's already existing.
Again, 4 o'clock Eastern time is 1 p.m. Pacific time. So in my home state of California, obviously, we are very concerned about this, okay? Because we have to stop trading at 1 p.m. But let me move on. I know in my home state of California, Silicon Valley Bank failed largely because it wasn't hedging its interest rate risk. And you have proposed a rule on conflicts of interest for securitization that would make hedging this exact type of risk much more difficult. Surely this is not the intent of the statute or your proposal, but it is what the rule as written would do. And I heard your response, your engagement with Congressman Fitzgerald, that hedging is mandated, but that is not what I'm hearing. So I would like to ask you if you can commit to working with me to ensure that the final rule clarifies that risk mitigating hedging is allowed, because the current rule is unclear on that point.
Again, I think it was Congress that has the risk mitigation hedging, but not trading against the investors. And so that's really the job if we put it out to public comment. But you've raised an issue of just broad, general interest rate hedging.
Well, I'm talking about that hedging issue, which is very important. And with all due respect, I believe the lawyers outside of your office disagree. And I think the last thing we want is a chilling effect on hedging. And let me remind you, SVB is a glaring example of how to get things wrong. And I hope we can work together to ensure that the final rule leaves the important risk mitigation tools intact. I just want to talk about the 34 items on your proposed rules list for 2022. This is triple of that previous year. And in fact, over the past 2 decades, 2021 was the only time the Commission proposed on more rules. So which obviously was mandated by Dodd-Frank Act. The October Inspector General report said that the staff believed that your more aggressive agenda potentially limits the time available for staff resources and analysis and increases the litigation risk. So can I just throw in the question, what sort of things increase litigation risk? Would you be able to respond to that?
Gentleman can answer for the record. Gentleman can answer in written form for the record.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Presley of Massachusetts is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Gensa, for joining us today. There are unrelenting people, institutions, forces at work that seek to dismantle gains that have been made in diversity and equity and inclusion from corner offices, state legislatures, the Supreme Court, and my colleagues across the aisle. In fact, when they got the gavel, the very first thing that they did, one of their very first actions, was to dissolve the DEI committee under FSC that was stood up by Ranking Member Waters, chair at the time, and that committee was headed by Joyce Beatty. So the other side isn't taking any days off, so I'm not taking any days off either. And that's why I want to talk to you about diversity on corporate boards and understanding the importance of disclosure and transparency when it comes to gender, racial diversity, and other data, along with the ways in which that can impact financial performance. We all know that corporate boards are powerful. They play a critical role in determining the mission of a company, its values, its vision, its strategy, everything from who the company will hire to which stakeholders it listens to. Now, for decades, white men have made up the majority of corporate board members, and they still do. Across S&P 500 companies, nearly a third of board directors are women, despite women making up 50% of the country. Only 22% are people of color, despite people of color making up 41% of the country. These gender and racial disparities should not be ignored. The Securities and Exchange Commission plays a critical role in overseeing corporate governance, and that includes work related to diversity and transparency. Chair Gensa, research shows that diverse boards better reflect our country, and I want to underscore this, lead to improved financial results for companies. I could sit here and debate fairness and morality and right side of history all day. But as my good friends at Black Women on Boards so often say, this is not a matter of black or white. It is a matter of green. So this is about improved outcomes. So what is the SEC doing to increase disclosures on corporate board diversity and inclusion?
Early in my time at the SEC, we had in front of us a filing from the stock exchange called NASDAQ. It's a self-regulatory organization that actually has a listing requirement of NASDAQ address these issues. Under the Exchange Act, under the laws, we approved that. That's still a matter of court challenge in the Fifth Circuit, if I recall. And I know that that's out there, but I think that
Let me reclaim my time
piece.
because I'm running out of it here. That's right. The NASDAQ proposal was approved by SEIC, calls for 2 diverse board members based on gender, race, and LGBTQ status. So this information is important. You agree, yes or no?
Well, we approved it under the Exchange Act, under the guidance there. I have to be very careful about
Okay, well, at the end of the day, this disclosure of this data is necessary because we know that which gets measured gets done. So we need that transparency. And I also think that the SEC needs to go much further and require greater disclosure of diversity, such as disability status, and greater disclosure of the company, including senior management and the workforce. So will the SEC commit to looking into expanding diversity and inclusion disclosures?
Staff has continued to work not only on this, but more broadly also on human capital
Yes or no,
disclosures.
Chairman Gensler, my time is running out. Can you make that commitment? This shouldn't be a hard commitment. Can you make that commitment to looking to expanding diversity and inclusion disclosures beyond just the NASDAQ proposal?
The staff of Corporation Finance continues to review alternatives there.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Just a quick history lesson. The first black woman on a corporate board was Patricia Robert Harris, and she was only appointed in 1971, roughly 50 years ago. The year is 2023, and it's well past time that we have corporate boards that reflect the true diversity of our country. Not only from a place of justice and fairness, but for improved outcomes, improved financial outcomes. My colleagues across the aisle have already made it clear they don't care about diversity. Their first action when they took back the gavel of this committee was to scrap the Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee established by Ranking Members Waters. They are on the wrong side of history when it comes to this issue and so many others. Chairman Gensler, it's important that the SEC be on the right side of history and press forward with corporate board diversity.
Gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Flood, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair Gensler, I'd like to continue our discussion about SOB 121 staff bulletin from the SEC that would potentially have significant effects on the ability of banks to custody digital assets. Let's briefly begin by following up on something that was raised the last time you were in front of this committee. You previously said that prior to the issuance of SOB 121, your staff did not confer with any of the prudential regulators. Is that correct?
You'd have the transcript, but I think that our staffs do talk to the prudential
prior to
regulators.
the issuance of SOB 121, did your staff confer with any of the prudential regulators?
With regard to that particular
Correct.
staff bulletin, I don't recall that they did. I know that they have.
So let's let the record reflect that the SEC staff did not think to confer with the prudential regulators before issuing the staff accounting bulletin. In response to my question, for the record, from April on this topic, you stated, quote, SOB 121 provides non-binding staff guidance on the application of existing accounting and disclosure requirements under U.S. GAAP. Prior to the issuance of SOB 121, Mr. Chair, did FOSB issue anything related to the custody of digital assets, and if so, what was issued?
I'd have to get back to you, but if you're asking about the Financial Accounting Standards Board, I don't know that they had done something on custody, but we could get back to you.
Since you cited the generally accepted accounting principles in your response, I decided I'd take a look at this myself. Prior to SOB 121's issuance, FOSB had not published anything related to the custody of digital assets. In fact, the board added accounting standards for digital assets to its agenda in May of 2022, 2 months after the issuance of SOB 121. Your response to my question, for the record, from April, also indicated that SOB 121 provides guidance on the application of existing accounting and disclosure requirements under the SEC rules. So here's a question. Prior to the issuance of SOB 121, what rules had the SEC finalized relating to the safeguarding of digital assets?
Well, we have on the books a rule from 2009 that applies to the custody of digital assets by investment advisors because it covers all funds and securities. That rule's on the books. We also had finalized something around special purpose broker-dealers, which relates to crypto broker-dealers.
So I took a look at this topic myself. The answer, quite frankly, is none. There were no SEC rules on the books that directly address the topic of custody of digital assets. As you know well, the SEC issued a proposed rulemaking on custody, including digital asset custody, in February of 2023, and that rule has not been finalized to this day. So to recap, the SEC failed to confer with prudential regulators despite the fact that anything changing rules around the custody of assets for banks, regardless of whether the bank is publicly traded, would be of obvious consequence to them. Then, when justifying the bulletin, the SEC cited the gap in SEC rulings. However, at the time when the bulletin was issued, there was no action by FOSB, no rulemaking from the SEC on this topic. In April, you said you wanted the SEC to, quote, stay in our lane, end quote, with regard to SOB 121's potential effects on a bank's balance sheet. It's fair to say that the fact pattern we have is that the SEC is not just going out of its lane, but it failed to comprehend the existence of any conflict with prudential rules. Additionally, the SEC's justification for issuing the bulletin is based on accounting guidelines that did not exist when the bulletin was issued and rulemaking that was not even started until nearly a year after the bulletin was issued. It's pretty obvious that one of two things happened, and both are bad. On one hand, it's possible that the SEC was well aware that there was no strong justification for issuing the bulletin and chose to do it anyway. That would show a pretty straightforward case of regulating by guidance and unsubstantiated theory. On the other hand, the SEC made some obvious basic mistakes in the issuance of this bulletin. In light of these mistakes, it's worth mentioning the SEC Inspector General's report on management and performance challenges. Among other things, the report indicated that very high attrition has required the SEC to rely on detailees with little or no experience to contribute to the core regulatory tasks such as rulemaking. The case of SOB 121 raises the question of whether the SEC is compromised. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, for 5 minutes.
Welcome, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you need time to respond to that.
I would just say, Mr. Flood, if I can, because the other member allowed me to, the SAB 121 guidance is based on GAAP. GAAP already exists. It doesn't need a new FASB statement. And the custody rule at the SEC from 2009 already covers funds and securities to the extent it might be crypto securities. It was already covered. It wouldn't have covered something like Bitcoin, the chair and I have talked about, that's not a security, but it would have covered crypto securities. Thank you.
Again, welcome, and thank you for your willingness to enforce the law where it applies. Appreciate that, especially in the crypto space. After many decisions in favor of the SEC's position, the SEC saw its first split decision, I would say, in the major crypto case in court with the July 13th ruling involving Ripple's XRP. In a partial victory, I guess, for Ripple, the Southern District of New York held that XRP was not a security when sold on a public exchange, but it is when sold to institutional investors, which I found surprising and counterintuitive given the vulnerability of individual investors versus institutional investors, and also the asymmetry that invites into the legal analysis involving crypto. But the wider picture is that I worry that we're heading towards a pattern of court battles to determine if each individual token is either a security or not. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on that decision. I know it's far from over. This case is far from over, but I just wanted to express to the committee what your views are on that issue and on that decision, to the degree you may.
I appreciate the opportunity, Congressman, but as we, as a commission, actually have filings in front of that court on this matter right now, I think those filings speak for themselves, and I just don't want to in any way speak to something and say, even choosing a word differently than the commission voted to make filings in that following.
Okay.
In essence, we filed what's called potentially do an interlocutory appeal.
Okay, fair enough. I suspected as much. One of the major proposals in the recent digital assets market structure legislation involves allowing a crypto firm to provisionally register and to be held harmless for a post-registration period. By now, we're all well aware of the damage caused by FTX when its CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried, defrauded millions of customers. More recently, the SEC took action against Binance for potentially, I think, similar behavior from the looks of things. The Binance complaint contains damaging allegations, including operating an unregistered securities exchange, broker, and clearing agency. Further, Mr. Zhao of Binance's operation, control of customer assets, permitted them to commingle, again, just like FTX, customer assets and divert customer assets as they pleased. There are some concerns about this bill the digital asset market structure bill, that it opens up a vulnerability for consumers to be harmed. And I was wondering if you had a view on that, and is there any concern that we should have with the way the bill is currently structured?
So if I can speak about the field itself rather than speaking about the bill, but it's a common practice in the crypto field right now to commingle that which we don't allow commingled elsewhere. And commingling what you might think of as an exchange, like the New York Stock Exchange, with brokers, you can think of your own individual brokers, and maybe a hedge fund or even a high-frequency trading shop, and even a clearinghouse, and maybe even some bank-like functions. And it's a recipe that has not led to good results in the crypto field and a lot of investors being harmed. So if Congress did anything, it would be separating out those conflicts.
Thank you.
Time's expired.
My time has expired. I yield back,
From
Mr.
South
Chairman.
Carolina is recognized for Mr. Norman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gensler, are you aware of Prometheum?
I'm sorry, I didn't
Are
hear
you
the-
aware of Prometheum, the company?
a company. I have heard of that company, yes, sir.
Well, they testified before us back on June 13th. The CEO and founder of Prometheum testified before us and he assured us that only 20% of the company is owned by China. Does that concern you at all? And I assume you know they're a broker-dealer, special purpose broker-dealer for digital asset securities.
Any registrant in our markets has to comply with our laws, and whether they're partially owned or wholly owned by China.
But I'm saying in your position, does that concern you? 20% owned by China, and the information that could be easily transferred to China, which is an enemy of this country?
Oh, sorry. What's really important, regardless of whether it's China or any other country, that our capital markets, it's a privilege to be in our capital markets, and that those companies comply with our laws, whether it's the company you mentioned or any other company controlled or partially owned by Chinese entities.
May comply with the laws, but still the threat is there that information is being shared on investors. We sent a letter to you back September 25th, Senator Tuberville and I. You know how long it took us to get this reply?
I'm sorry, September 25th, yesterday? No, I'm sorry.
Of 23, yes. Yesterday, yes, that's right. We did it, sent it 10 weeks earlier. Took 10 weeks, is my point, to get this back. And what we ask you to do is look into that, into the China connection, which is a serious concern, should be of yours and your role. Basically, and I'm not going to read it, this is just a non-response. I mean, it's just words. And if what's concerning to me is if somebody in your role is just shuffling paper, it's a danger to this country.
There are a number of broker-dealers in our country that have affiliation with China. You named one. It's not the only one. I think your letter and some other letters from the senator named some of the others. And those broker-dealers have to comply with our laws. They actually have to, under our laws, have their books and records here so they can be inspected and looked at by FINRA, which you mentioned.
Does China go by the rules? I mean, does communist China go by the rules?
They have a different set of laws there. They have a different government. But I'm saying if you're here in the U.S., they have to comply.
Here's
with
what we would ask.
laws.
I mean, 10 weeks to get this, and to get this letter, what is it, 2 paragraphs, is really an insult. Are you familiar with metamaterials?
Yes, I am, sir. I'm not very deeply, but it is a company that I've heard of.
Do you know what the aggregate shares are, audited shares count of MMTLP is as of close of market on December 8th, 22?
I don't know. I know that it's a company that then exchanged into something called NextBridge, I believe.
Okay. Does SEC have this information on the audited shares?
It may be a matter of public record. I mean, it was a company that it did an exchange and became another company.
We'll try writing you another letter, and if you would look into it, we would appreciate that.
Thank you.
You know, as has been said earlier, the arbitrary rulemaking that is occurring under your rule on theoretical assumptions is really getting our constituents that are involved in the financial markets very upset. And considering your weight, you're going way past the boundaries that need to be going. And I think you've made SEC a crusader of rulemaking by enforcement rather than modernizing the regulatory guidance. This isn't something new that you've heard. My only request is that, you know, you can blame it on staff turnover, you can blame it on a lot of things, but that you would prioritize this rulemaking and actually we'd make the case for reductions if you would even consider something. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the ranking member as well. And of course, I'm grateful to the Secretary for appearing today. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to work with you. Mr. Secretary,
I'm honored to have another title, but it's just Chair or Gary.
Chair, okay, all right. Mr. Chairman, excuse me. The traditional services of an exchange, if you perform those, broker, clearing agency, these are the kinds of things that should be registered. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, if you're a broker in America, if you're a dealer, an exchange, not only registered, but then comply with the laws so that the public is protected.
Mm. And in your capacity as a chairman, if you are of the opinion that these things are not taking place, are you duty bound to do what is within your authority to protect the public?
Yes, and we end up being a cop on the beat, and it takes a 5-member commission, but sometimes we bring enforcement actions if people are not properly complying with the laws and registering.
Mm. Public Citizen has indicated that crypto amounts to a giant Ponzi scheme whose victims disproportionately include low and moderate income individuals as well as people of color. I'm concerned about that. I appreciate your being the cop on the beat. I want to protect people from what may be a Ponzi scheme. There are different opinions about this, but what are some of the consequences of having a poorly regulated digital currency?
Well, the crypto token field has, there's been billions of dollars of losses, and in fact, there's some studies that suggest that lower income communities and communities of color have lost more, and that it's not been to their advantage at all to be investing in these assets on average. Really, it's a matter of the American public can decide what investment risks they want to take, but they should have the full and truthful disclosure about those investments if they're under the securities laws. And then the trading platforms themselves should comply with the laws and not be entering into a bunch of conflicted services where they sometimes are trading against their customers on those exchanges.
Mm-hmm. Do you consider the dollar, the American dollar, an effective, efficient digital currency?
Well, the American dollar, which is the leading currency around the globe, most of it is digital. I mean, we buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks, or we get paid, or we pay our rent digitally. Occasionally, we still use paper or cash.
And do you believe that properly regulated, we can have digital currencies that won't amount to a Ponzi scheme?
Well, I think the U.S. dollar is quite strong, and I think the U.S. dollar, because we use it digitally already, is a form of a digital dollar. Crypto tokens are really quite something different, sir. They're not a currency. This is going back into economic history, but they don't fulfill the three functions of a currency, of a store of value, a unit of account, a medium of exchange. They might, maybe in another day, but not in 2023, frankly.
And our failure to act, or your failure, because you're really the person who's in the hot seat, as it were. Our failure to act can cause a lot of harm to a lot of people, as we have seen with one circumstance. And I thank you for what you're doing to prevent that harm. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go back.
Gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Stiles, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Gensler, for being here with us today. This summer, I asked Director Girding about the SEC staff, about whether or not the SEC staff conducted legal analysis of shareholder proposals. And Director Girding seemed to have a tough time answering the question, and I walked away understanding that the SEC does not conduct much, if any, legal analysis of a shareholder proposal. That's troubling to me, because I think that would be one of the roles of the SEC, in particular, following the SEC's review of the particular Traveler shareholder proposal, the racial equity audit, that I think could have driven that company to be forced to engage in illegal behavior. And so asking you if you could give me a clear answer, does the SEC conduct legal analysis of shareholder proposals?
In preparation for the hearing, I watched your testimony between Director Girding and you. I think it is part, and I don't do this on a day-to-day basis, but I think when staff looks at, sometimes companies come in and ask the staff's opinion on things. Staff does look at, one of the components they look at is the legal.
So not every time. So when you say sometime, I think it's just important for us to understand whether or not we should make that explicit. I think it should be explicit. So sometimes the SEC looks at whether or not a shareholder proposal is legal, and sometimes they do not review whether or not a shareholder proposal is legal.
As I understand it, I believe it's one of the components of the review, but I'd be glad to have staff work with your staff and get you the details of the.
I'd like you to. I mean, the fact that you reviewed it in advance of this committee hearing, which I appreciate the amount of time and effort you put into preparing for a hearing, but you don't have an answer specifically whether or not the SEC conducts a legal review, not even a legal opinion, but just a legal review on each shareholder proposal, to me, would be a baseline review for the SEC.
I'm here saying I believe that it's part of the review, but I don't know if it's on every shareholder proposal, because it depends on the nature of the shareholder proposal, of course.
Okay. I'd like you to come back with that information about the process in which you review shareholder proposals in light of probably two key things. One is we brought in the two largest proxy advisors, ISS and Glass Lewis, and they specifically said on the record that they do not conduct a review for legality. They instead rely upon the SEC's analysis for legality. On the record in this committee room, your director and now you kind of go back and forth as to how you conduct that legal review. I think it's really important for us as policymakers to understand whether or not anyone, the SEC or proxy advisors, which may not be under, we can get to how they're registered with the SEC, but who's conducting the legal review, because it has a significant impact on companies. And if we build upon that and we look at the Staff Legal Bulletin 14L, we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of shareholder proposals. We're seeing more focused on social and political concerns. And I go back and look at the underlying language of that legal staff bulletin saying that they would consider whether or not a proposal concerns a matter of widespread public debate. Can you define widespread public debate?
I think, sir, that it's really, and this goes back all the way back to the 1960s, of shareholder proposals, that investors can make shareholder proposals on the term you used, on wide scale.
Widespread public debate is your legal staff bulletin.
And that goes back many decades.
But can you define it? I understand there's a history to it, I understand, but legal staff bulletin came out under your chairmanship. Can you define the term widespread public debate?
And the staff does, when asked, give their informal advice, but ultimately it's between the company and the investors.
Understood, but don't you think that's of concern that you can't define what widespread public debate is when your staff bulletin says that that's a point of review for shareholder proposals? I'll offer you that it concerns me, in particular in light of the dramatic increase in the number of shareholder proposals we've seen that are based on social and political objectives rather than governance of the nation's largest companies. See if I can get this in really briefly. We've discussed your use of email. You've had an aggressive enforcement campaign on off-channel communications for financial firms. Have you used anything other than official SEC resources to conduct your government business?
No, I comply with the laws, but I also, if somebody sends me an email, then I forward it into the SEC.
Thank you very much for your time. I yield back.
Gentleman from New York, Mr. Garbarino, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Gensler, thanks for coming today. Financial services sector and the Biden administration have made harmonization of cyber incident reporting a top priority. In fact, the Department of Homeland Security Cyber Incident Reporting Councils recently recommended the federal government coordinate among themselves to reduce the burden on the reporting entity. But instead of reducing the burden, the SEC has finalized rules that CERC has called duplicative cross-sector reporting requirements and that overlap with congressionally mandated Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act, the CIRCIA. Given the council's designation, why didn't the SEC harmonize its cybersecurity disclosure requirements with existing regulations, and more importantly, wait until the Department of Homeland Security and CISAs developed the rulemaking under the recent signed into law CIRCIA?
One, we've had good discussions with the Department of Homeland Security, but we finalized the corporate disclosure piece because it was important for the public investors to know if there had been a material cyber breach.
Is it more important? Is investor information more important than Homeland Security? Well, and I asked that question because the reason we want to harmonize, and the reason we as a Congress have said harmonize, and the reason the Biden administration has said harmonize these incident reporting rules, is because we've heard from the private sector that their cyber employees are spending 40 to 50% of their time, and we've spoken about this before, on complying with cyber regulations, not just yours, but with all sorts of different cyber regulations. So and we talked about this last time we were here, specifically the rule that was just finalized in July, and you said at that time you've been having good discussions with DHS. But again, this rule came out, and and DHS said, I quote, that this current rule is duplicative cross-sector reporting. It's a duplicative cross-sector reporting requirement. So even though you've had good conversations, I guess they didn't lead anywhere because you still came out with the rule.
Actually, they did, because it's only reporting to the public if it's a material cyber event. It's 4 business days, which actually is longer than the CERSHA 72 hours. And thirdly, has important considerations in there that if the Department of Justice thinks for national security or public safety it should be delayed, it will be delayed.
It is longer. 4 days is longer, but within a material breach, there's different requirements there. So I have to ask, because there's also a concern that you have companies that are reporting a possible material cybersecurity breach that might not have been able to fix that breach. And if they're publicly reporting it, it could, 1, put that company at further risk, or 2, put other companies who are using the same system and the same backdoor can be found in their system. We just saw over the summer a company, there was an attack on a company. They announced this attack before the patch was released, and you saw other companies and 3 federal agencies get hacked under the same vulnerability. So I'm concerned that having this public reporting before the breach is fixed, before the patch is fixed, is going to cause more harm than good. And I'm not saying don't regulate cybersecurity. I think it's very important. I just think when our goal is harmonization, when the Biden administration's goal is harmonization, when everybody is saying harmonization, having these rules come out that are just going to be duplicative and cause more harm on the companies that are supposed to be protecting information is not a great idea. I'm running out of time, so I do want to move on to something else. Between 2019 and 2022, the annual cost of operating a consolidated audit trail, or CAT, increased by 900%. In March, CAT unveiled a 2023 budget exceeding $223 million, which is 10% of the SEC's entire budget. The SEC recently approved a funding model that would pass nearly all these costs on to market participants. What is the SEC doing to control the costs of CAT? I understand SROs control and operate them, or own and operate, but it's under your umbrella. I need to know what you're doing to control those costs, and if you would support moving CAT onto the SEC's budget.
I don't know, Mr. Chair, what you're going to tell me.
If the gentleman would respond in written form to the gentleman's question. And I appreciate the gentleman's leadership in cybersecurity issues, WIG-WIM protocols, and the work he's put in over the years on those policies. He's worked in other committees. So,
and WIG-WIM is very important.
We'll now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Lawler, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair Gensler, you have embarked on a rapid and extensive campaign to reform every facet of our markets. It is evident that your rules will significantly change our markets. For example, your equity market structure rules will impact all retail investors, encompassing over 228 million retail accounts. The swing pricing rule will have implications for every mutual fund involving over 100 million American investors. The climate rule imposes new costs on every public company. The predictive analytics rule will encompass virtually every type of technology. The private funds rule fundamentally reshapes the regulation of private institutions in a potentially unlawful manner. The pace and scope of your rules is unprecedented. Have you taken the time to do a comprehensive economic analysis examining the cumulative impacts of all of these rulemakings on the markets and broader economy?
Representative Lawler, actually our pace is about the same as prior administrations, and per a Bloomberg law article.
Respectfully, we can disagree with that, and that's not what I asked you. I asked you a very specific question. Have you taken the time to do a comprehensive economic analysis examining the cumulative impact of all of these rulemakings on the markets and the broader economy? Yes or no?
On each of the rules, we do a robust economic analysis, and then if another rule is finalized, we incorporate that, and we take into consideration that interaction in the possible further rulemaking and adjust the economic baselines.
So you are saying, for the record, that you have taken the time to do comprehensive economic analysis, examine the cumulative impact of all of these rulemakings on the market and the broader economy, yes or no?
For the record, what we do is we take into consideration, as and if a rule is finalized, the interaction with other rules.
Right.
Because it changes what's called the economic baseline.
Yes. So have you done the cumulative impact? Have you studied that? Have you done an economic analysis on all of it?
We do them rule by rule individually,
Yep.
and also the interaction as it relates to other rules. If we were to finalize a rule, then we take that in consideration.
So can you explain your engagement with market participants before putting out significant rule proposals? Are you holding public roundtables?
We meet with the public extensively before the equity market rules. We had numerous meetings from when I came on in the summer of 2021 all the way through December of 22.
Chair Gensler, California Governor Newsom recently confirmed his intention to sign 2 bills mandating climate disclosure into law. You mentioned to the press last week that the SEC's staff is, quote, going to take a look if it were to become law because it may change some of the economic baseline for our rule, end quote. It's evident that the law will indeed alter the economics of your rule. So can you make a commitment to allowing the public an opportunity to provide feedback on the Commission's updated economic analysis before finalizing the rule?
We take in consideration public comment. We've had 16,000 comments, a lot of comments on the economics, and we often will adopt based on those comments.
No. What I'm asking you is, based on the reevaluation, based on the potential change in law, will you commit to allowing the public an opportunity to provide feedback on the Commission's updated economic analysis before finalizing the rule?
I would say this: we're compelled. This is an important thing.
It's a pretty straightforward question. Will you allow the public to comment on the updated economic analysis before finalizing the rule? Yes or no?
We would put it. We would
Sir?
If we finalize a rule, it would be part of that finalized rule.
Okay. I know you like to obfuscate, but I'm honestly asking you
sir,
a very straightforward question.
I understand.
Can you commit?
Where you're headed.
Can you commit?
No. The answer
so you won't
no.
commit. Thank you. At least you answered the question. Thank you. I want to touch on another factor here. The SEC recently proposed amendments to expand and update regulation systems compliance and integrity. The proposal would expand the scope of SCI entities to include certain registered broker-dealers for the first time. Feedback from market participants on this proposal suggests that the actual costs for this proposal are in the billions of dollars as a result of the SEC attempting to micromanage the technology setup of individual firms, yet these enormous compliance costs are conveniently absent from the SEC's cost-benefit analysis. Why did the Commission fail to acknowledge these costs in its economic analysis?
Gentleman's time has expired. If the chair will respond in written form.
Thank you.
We'll now go to the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Nunn, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Gensler, thank you, and welcome back to this committee. I know each time we get to have a lot of questions on this. Last time we spoke, I addressed swing pricing and hard close proposals with you. I also want to reemphasize here the devastating impact that's had on many of my hardworking constituents, from their retirement plans, their 401ks, my nurses with 457 plans, my teachers with 403B plans. I think you get the gist of where we're going with this. As you are well aware, after this morning's rule, I believe it needs to be withdrawn, and I look forward to your team's response to both Chairwoman Wagner and Ranking Member Sherman on the letter that we signed on to and are still awaiting to hear back on. Look, I want to talk specifically here about the ag and small business communities that I represent. The extra regulations that the SEC is potentially proposing in this regulation under the guise of consumer protection is going to add $6 billion in increased annualized costs to the industry, an additional 6 million compliance hours, many of these being small family farms and medium Main Street businesses. I hope you appreciate this has a tremendous impact on my constituents back home. Along with 4 other members of the Ag Committee on which I serve, we have signed a letter here moving forward a conversation, which brings me to my question on the February 15th proposal rulemaking on safeguarding client assets aimed at reshaping custody assets. As you know, we have worked hard in your former role with CFTC on how this can be successful. But dozens of trade groups have signed up and identified that this rulemaking would represent trillions of dollars of assets that our constituents back home face. Both of these letters, Mr. Chair, highlight significant errors with the proposed rulemaking, and I'm going to begin this conversation by asking you to consider withdrawing it until these things get fixed. Your definitions of custody and asset would expand so greatly they would encompass derivatives and future markets that have been overseen by the CFTC, your former organization, for decades. So with these bipartisan letters specifically, I believe that they would upend our markets overseen by the CFTC, eroding their essential risk management functions and putting our nation's farmers and producers at risk. Now, Chairman Gensler, in your 432-page proposal on economic analysis, do you know how many times agriculture was mentioned as part of this review?
I don't recall, but I suspect you're going to let me know.
Would it surprise you to know not once? In fact, it was only mentioned as a subcategory within a footnote. Clearly, this is concerning, particularly for my farming constituents, but for entire economies built around this, something the CFTC has been doing for decades. So, Chair Gensler, earlier you answered Representative Lucas' question. Has there been any coordination with the SEC and the CFTC on this issue?
Yes, we've been in dialogue both prior to the proposal and subsequent to the proposal, and I think that...
Can I get some specifics on that? When did you send a request over to the CFTC for this coordination? The day of before the proposal? A week before the proposal? After the proposal was already out?
Representative, it usually just is staff-to-staff dialogue. So it's,
right. I look forward for your staff providing me the date in which you actually asked for this information from the CFTC. Did the CFTC provide you with any recommendations on your rulemaking?
We engage with multiple federal regulators on this role, and we'll continue to do that because we benefit from that feedback.
I'm very happy to hear that, Mr. Chair. I'd like to see that being transparently provided to this committee then. Did you read these comments, and were they incorporated into your final proposal?
Sir, we haven't finalized a proposal yet.
Did you incorporate any of CFTC's
We haven't finalized an adoption yet.
Mr. Chair, did you incorporate any of the CFTC's proposals into your recommendation?
We have put out to public comment to get feedback, and we get feedback, and it's benefiting this, and I think that we can...
So I haven't heard anything about the CFTC on this. You're putting it out to the public, which brings me to my next question. It's my understanding that you recently reopened the comment period without re-proposing the rule. Specifically, what value does this add to the ag community and my constituents for their grave concerns if you're reopening it, but you're not listening to the CFTC, the ag committees, or even what's happening on a bipartisan level within this committee?
We benefit by reopening. I think we reopened this because we had another rule that may intersect with this, the discussion we've had a lot here today, and so we reopened it formally to get further comment.
It might suggest to some that you didn't get the answers you wanted, and so you reopened it to others. So let me end with this. I urge you to withdraw this rule as my bipartisan and bicameral elements have argued the same. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Gentleman from Florida, Mr. Donalds, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Gensler, welcome back. Hey, do you remember where we left off, you and I?
I do. You're a very good questioner, sir.
All right, well, let me refresh. Let's bring some things up. Where we left off was, did you facilitate the payment for the Steele dossier for the Hillary Clinton campaign back in 2016? Because you were the CFO. You acknowledged that. You also said, in response to my question, that this payment was not something that I was aware of, quote unquote. Those are your words. Interesting things have occurred since then. John Podesta actually testified to a committee of Congress, and John Podesta testified to a question about, was Gary, meaning you, Was he day-to-day, hands-on, signing every check? And so John Podesta testifies, actually he was under a deposition with the committee here in Congress. He says, yes, I don't know if he signed the checks, but he was there every day, meaning you. So let's circle back. Were you aware of the fact that the Hillary Clinton campaign actually paid for the Steele dossier, which unleashed one of the worst issues of intelligence malfeasance that our nation has ever seen?
No, sir, I answered this 6 months ago, and this is the same answer today. No.
You weren't aware of what was going on? Mr. Gensler, I find that very interesting because, if I listen to some of the people and the staff that have left the SEC, you're very aware of everything that is going on. It's actually your MO. You're very hands-on. So you're going to tell the committee right now you had no idea that the Hillary Clinton campaign, of which you were the CFO on, sent money to Perkins Coie for a dossier that was phony, that led to the spying on of a presidential campaign in 2016. You were not aware of any of this.
Look, sir, as a chief financial officer in a political campaign, I was not aware of what a law firm was doing with some of the money that they got.
Now, I find that interesting because in some of your other rhetoric about CFOs in the public sector, the private sector of our economy, you are very tough on CFOs. You've said on the record on many occasions that CFOs have a fiduciary responsibility to the organizations that they cover, that they should be aware of everything that is going on. So how is that a standard you hold CFOs in the private sector to, but you don't hold yourself to that same standard?
That's not a standard that the SEC holds CFOs to. It's about their financials and that the financials are put together in accordance with GAAP and that the numbers are accurate. And that they're
So did you accurately pay for the Steele dossier out of the Hillary Clinton campaign?
Sir, I learned about that way after President Trump was a president and Hillary Clinton was a private citizen.
All right, well, let's move on. We'll probably circle on that another time. I want to reference a story in Capital Account from June 13. Mr. Chairman, I ask for unanimous consent for the story be entered into the record.
Without objection.
The story notes that you met with Senator Tammy Baldwin in May about the SEC's proposal related to the 13D beneficial ownership disclosure, at which time you allegedly asked Senator Baldwin's staff, allegedly, to contact an organization called We the Investors to submit comment letters in favor of the 13D proposal. Subsequently, the SEC was flooded with 350 plus comment letters from so-called individuals, but mostly form letters stamped with the moniker We the Investors in favor of their proposal. It appears to me that you have engaged in astroturfing to advance your own agenda. Is this true? If this is true, is this a serious breach of impartiality that would violate the spirit, if not the letter of the law of the APA?
Sure, again, I don't know what the press is talking about. I remember a meeting with the senator. It was a good thought.
Did you meet with Senator Baldwin in May with respect to 13D?
I think that it's on my public calendar that I met with Senator Baldwin. I meet with senators and representatives.
Okay, so here's what I need to get from your public calendar if you actually met with Senator Baldwin. I think the committee would like to know that. In this meeting with Senator Baldwin's staff, did you speak to an organization called We the Investors?
I have no memory of that.
Mr. Gensler, the no memory routine from a lot of appointees is really getting old. You guys are discussing and leading some of the various regulations facing our economy. So to come before a committee of Congress, have no idea what you talked to with a senator's staff about 13D?
The meeting was with the senator, sir.
All right, well then, if you don't recall what you said to a United States senator about key issues facing our economy from a regulatory basis,
please, sir,
that's a real problem, don't you think?
You're a good questioner, but please, sir, that story is not one that I would confirm. It's not a story that I believe is accurate.
Let me ask you a question, broad base. Do you think it's appropriate for the chairman of the SEC, or frankly the head of any agency, to engage with outside groups to accomplish the agenda they want to see through rulemaking?
We are responsible under the Administrative Procedure Act to hear from outside parties, market participants, constituents in your district, members
No, that's
of
not my
Congress.
question. We want to hear from outside groups. Is it okay to foment outside groups to help you accomplish what you want to see?
Gentleman's time's expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gentlelady from Indiana, Ms. Houchin, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Waters, and thank you to Chairman Gensler for speaking with us today. Chair Gensler, under the last Democrat chair of the SEC, Mary Jo White, the Commission adhered closely to the statutory authority of Congress. During her time as chair, 59% of the SEC's proposals were mandated by Congress. By contrast, under your leadership, only 17% of the Commission's proposals are mandated by Congress, according to a report from Professor Hal Scott of Harvard. Why is there such a rush under your chairmanship to promulgate so many rules without specific mandates from Congress?
It's because technology and the markets have changed so much. She was coming in as chair right after a financial crisis, so naturally there was, I think, 120 mandates that Congress placed. But you're accurate. We've picked up about 10 of those from Dodd-Frank, one from the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act.
Chair Gensler, there's a perception that the SEC is neglecting public input, and particularly from bipartisan letters that the members of Congress have sent to voice valid concerns regarding individual rules and the rulemaking process. The concerns encompass the bipartisan concerns about insufficient comment periods and a general response to bipartisan concerns regarding proposals on swing pricing, liquidity risk management, and equity market structure. Are you aware of similar bipartisan concerns being raised with previous SEC chairs? If not, could you elaborate on why the opinions of Congress don't factor into your considerations?
Well, the opinions of Congress most definitely factor into my consideration.
It doesn't seem so, Mr. Chairman. It does not seem so when only 17% of the proposals that you have brought forth are the result of mandates from Congress. I find it incredibly frustrating that any time we provide comment or send what we call strongly worded letters about our opinions on how the SEC should behave, it seems like these must be immediately thrown in the trash and disregarded. I want to turn to Reg SCI. The SEC originally adopted Regulation Systems Compliance and Integrity, otherwise known as Reg SCI, in 2014 in response to several market disruptions at national securities exchanges. Earlier this year, the Commission proposed to expand Reg SCI to certain broker-dealers. However, unlike in 2014, the Commission fails to provide a single instance of a broker-dealer systems disruption that had a significant market-wide impact in the securities markets. In fact, the SEC's own proposal acknowledges that broker-dealer systems performed well during the unprecedented trading volumes and volatility at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Further, the Commission admits that it, quote, finds it impracticable to quantify the many benefits associated with amended Regulation SCI. Once again, this seems like the Commission is providing a solution in search of a problem. Chairman Gensler, given that the Commission cannot point to a single broker-dealer systems disruption or any tangible benefits to applying Reg SCI to broker-dealers, how can you justify that proposal?
As we outlined in the proposal itself, which is still out for public comment, that some broker-dealers may have the size and scale and standing in the markets that if they were taken down, that could be disruptive to the markets. That's the important thing. And this so-called systems compliant integrity is about those most consequential or central parts of the market.
The SEC's RegFlex agenda for 2023 indicates you intend to finalize proposed rulemaking to expand the definition of an exchange in short order. Although the SEC has reopened this rulemaking, the proposed rule is still fraught with insufficient economic analysis and ill-defining scope, among other things. Given Congress's ongoing and unaddressed concerns with the rulemaking, as well as concerns of hundreds of stakeholders, it seems irresponsible for the SEC to finalize this rulemaking. Could you comment on the expected timeline for finalization of this rule?
You'll be pleased to hear that we don't do it against a clock. It's really when we get the comments and the economics right and the legal authorities right, and then discuss it with the commissioners.
And finally, I want to raise an alarming issue that I think needs further attention: the timing of various actions by the SEC while Congress is seeking to establish a regulatory framework on digital assets. To name a few, January 12th, 2023, this committee announces the formation of the Digital Assets Financial Technology and Inclusion Subcommittee. It was subsequently announced that the SEC pursued enforcement actions against two firms. March 9th, 2023, the committee hosts its first hearing on the Biden administration's approach to digital assets. An hour before the hearing, you publish an op-ed in The Hill. April 27th, 2023, the committee hosts another hearing on digital asset regulation. You tweet and quote office hours video on your view that most digital assets are securities. May 3rd, 2023, this committee and the House Agriculture Committee, led by my colleague Chairman Thompson, announced our first joint hearing on digital asset legislation, which is unprecedented. You published another office hours. I'm not one to connect dots, but it seems like you're actively trying to undermine the work of Congress. You must not impede our work to do our job, even though you won't do yours. I yield back.
If the gentleman wants to respond.
I very much respect the work of this committee, and particularly the work of this committee around crypto assets. We have a robust time because this is a field that's rife with fraud and abuse, and so our enforcement agenda sometimes does roll out while you're doing your good work here as well.
Mr. Ogles of Tennessee is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gensler, thank you for being here. I do want to echo the chairman and support the chairman that, I think we've come to this crossroad where subpoenas may be necessary. It seems that compliance and requests for information and documentation has been kind of shortcoming. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, you have my full support when and if you decide to move forward. But Mr. Gensler, I want to kind of, one of the things that concerns me is sometimes the subjective or the perception of subjective and arbitrary nature of the rules. In May 25, 2022, the SEC proposed amending the names rule to further regulate the names of investment funds. Well, I think everyone would agree that it's misleading of a fund called the Mexico Growth Fund, made most of its investments in Japanese value stocks. Many names may be subject to differences of opinion. The proposal specifically mentions ESG funds. Mr. Gensler, is the SEC equipped to determine what, broadly speaking, is good for the environment as it pertains to ESG?
No, sir, we're not an environmental regulator.
So again, going back to the subjective nature of some of the rules and the compliance that is forced, I mean, it's kind of like what's better than environment, paper, or plastic bags? And so when we should be focusing more on the fiduciary aspect of a fund versus its environmental compliance, I have concerns. When you look at the social component of ESG, who would you entrust, or how will you determine whether or not a company is compliant with the social portion of ESG?
So in terms of this names rule, it was basically truth in advertising, that if you're going to say you're a social fund, to use that, you have to actually then describe what the marketer of that fund means by social, and then ensure that you invest as you're marketing to the public. This was really a rule in most regards, the names rule adopted in 2023 years ago to protect the investing public, that the advisors they pick are doing, that they say what they mean and they mean what they say.
So, but again, to my point, this creates a very subjective nature to the rules process, right? Because you just said that you basically, you don't have the capability to judge the environmental component. You don't have the capability to judge the social component. And so now if there's a clear definition and disclosure in the prospectus, who is to determine whether or not they're compliant, right? And so you now have a rule that can be abused or a rule that's completely useless. And so why even have the rule when at the end of the day it should be about?
Well, it's sort of like, as one of my fellow commissioners said when we voted on this rule, if you say that you're selling pepperoni pizza, that there's actually pepperonis on the pizza.
I like pepperoni pizza, so don't get me wrong, right? But I just look at, and forgive me, these rules outlive any given administration, but under this current administration, the Biden administration doesn't necessarily have the greatest track record of trust with word definitions. So, and I don't mean to be, contrarian here, but if the administration can't figure out what a woman is, how do I trust them to have any kind of bearing or judgment on?
I totally understand what you're saying, but that's not what we adopted in a names rule, is that if you're marketing to the public that you're, let's say, an environmental or a green fund, you describe what that means and you ensure that at least 80% of the investments in the fund meet your self-described. Sure. You can describe what a pepperoni pizza is, But if you describe it, you better comply with it.
But again, I just,
It's
so
the fund
when
manager's
you look at
discretion.
like the climate disclosure and the burden that's being put on businesses to track their supply chains, you're now creating an enforcement mechanism that the company has to enforce on its supply chain. So again, these rules that you're pushing down on business, that you're pushing down on these instruments, only does one thing but drive up costs on, at the end of the day, the end use. So the very people that you're trying to protect, you're hurting because of the arbitrary nature of the rules that you've put in place. It's very frustrating. And again, Mr. Chairman, I'm about out of time, but I was just going to say that I would say open up the floodgates, hit them with subpoenas, get the information we need, the obfuscation and not answering questions. I'm sick and tired of it. I've sat back here and I've listened to this entire hearing. I mean, dude, you wear tap dancing shoes better than Fred Astaire, and enough is enough. And I don't mean any disrespect, but it's time that questions are answered, that we have the information we need. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Gensler. It's 2:29. It's not your longest day in a committee, but thank you for being here. As I stated in the outset, it's my request of you and your agency to comply with our request as a committee. I don't want to use the compulsory process for the first time in our history between this House of Representatives, this committee, and your agency. So I think it's would be a purposeful act on your part if it resulted in us issuing a subpoena. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit additional written questions for the witness to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witness for his response. I ask you, Chair Gensler, to please respond no later than October 30th to those written questions. This hearing is adjourned.
Oh, what is up, Blue Crew? How's it going, Green Giants? And welcome, Ledger citizens, to another DL Talk. Not the best beginning to a DL Talk, that is for sure. But hey, we got to share what we got to share, and it's, you know, there was some good stuff in there. There was some good stuff. We had some good laughs, at least, watching this, and you know, it looks like Congress is definitely fed up with his tap dancing. I love that last statement that guy was saying there. He's like, you got tap dancing shoes better than Fred Astaire, you know, or whatever. He's tap dancing around answers better than Fred Astaire, this guy, you know. And then all of his answers being like, I don't remember. And then, you know, it's just, if only you could fire a guy for how many times he says he can't remember. Like, if an SEC chair keeps going, I don't remember, or if anyone under Congress says they don't remember, there has to be a penalty to it. You know, like, yes, genuinely you can not remember, but there's got to be like a word count, like the amount of times that you can respond I don't remember to a certain amount of questions. So let's say if you're asked like 4 or 5 questions and you say I don't remember to each of those questions, then you are automatically relieved of your job right then and there. You are removed. Because, like, there's no reason you can't remember 5 different instances that have nothing to do with each other, right? So, something like that, like a countdown of how many times you can deflect an answer, right? Especially those yes or no answers. They should just change up the whole rule of the game, is limit it down to yes or no answers, and the person who's being questioned can only answer yes or no. No other bullshit aside. So, you know, both on the Congress side, they got to get better in formulating their questions, and then both on, you know, whoever's being questioned side, they are limited to only yes or no answers. And it's, you know, clear, because the law is basically like black and white, right? Except if you're a lawyer, you can find the gray spots in the law and, you know, flip those words around to mean whatever you want them to mean. But I think in terms of this environment, it should just be clear cut. It's such a waste of time, man, you know, of this whole poker game, you know, back and forth. We need transparency in terms of our government, especially when the government entities are interacting with each other. And it sucks when they have conflicts of interest. It just makes no sense. I don't remember exactly. Gary, do you remember being affiliated with something illegal? I don't remember. But you said at the time that I'll always remember this for the rest of my life when you did it. I don't remember. There must be something in the water in DC that alters your memory selectively. Yep. But anyways, continuing on, appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks for hitting the likes. We got 21 likes, guys. You guys are amazing. Thanks so much for tuning in. We got to jump through this stream. We already spent a good hour jumping in on everything Gary here. So let's keep going. You know, the cryptos that are up in the past 24 hours here. We got EWT up 3.41%. I mean, that was a good time to be buying that dip, at least for EWT. We saw, you know, there was no major reason for its crash right there. Nice little recovery from going, 169, 171 up to 182. And then we got SHX here at 000478. Doing pretty well in the past 7 days, dude. The crypto that is up in the past 7 days, you're not going to believe it. The only crypto up on the Blue Crew Top 10. And this crypto Blue Crew Top 10's got cryptos the likes of XRP, XLM, Avalanche, Algo, QNT, XX, HBAR, XDC, right? And you got SHX up in the past 7 days. Let's go, Blue Crew. I mean, we did make a decision, a big pivotal decision for the future of this ecosystem, you know, to be ramping up towards $1 by the end of the year. But, you know, that's no guarantee that it's going to happen. But hey, man, the Blue Crew owns more than half the supply now. And I think we're in agreement with Sean Bennett and Tammy Camp, the queen and king of the Blue Castle there with Stronghold, that this is the best solution for the future of this ecosystem, right? I think they're all just too comfortable. They get paid way too much money. Yeah, exactly right, guy. Once again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a pro trader. I'll never tell you what to do. I am always wrong, but the Blue Crew is always right. Yeah, we got news about the Euro C stablecoin on Stellar. You know, hey, we got USDC on Stellar. Now we got Euro C on Stellar. Stellar making a lot of good developments while not having to deal with the SEC, right? And all the, it doesn't seem like they're being held back at all. Maybe allowed to play a little bit of catch up. We even got more news. You know, the launch of a WhatsApp integration right here, tech demo, Meridian 2023. Some pretty big announcements coming out of there, right? So let's check out some more stuff here. See more news. So yeah, the WhatsApp integration being announced there at Meridian. Awesome. Awesome stuff for Stellar. Augustus Carson speaks on legitimacy, privacy, integrity, choice towards a legal framework for CBDCs. It's on the tip of everybody's tongue. It's all about CBDCs. And what have we been seeing? The CBDC fintech or hackathon or whatever Ripple's been ruling. All those CBDC focused projects. I mean, Ripple is so massive, guys. They are global. They have universities that they've invested in to educate the future of, you know, blockchain development and everything like this. And you're seeing a lot of those developers learning how to work within the XRPL ecosystem. And then all these proposals and like this ramp up of its infrastructure to make it more developer friendly, to, you know, to keep increasing its legitimacy at scale. I'm really excited with what's going on here and building out. And, you know, yes, I know a lot of people see CBDCs as a terrible thing, but hell, it's moving towards a world of digital payments, whether we like it or not. And there's going to be certain catalysts that are going to happen that make everybody in the globe agree, yes, it's time for digital payments, because this other, you know, there's going to probably be some major catalyst that makes it officially the end game for cash, right? And cash transactions. And, you know, people are going to move forward with it. Monetary policy dictates a lot of how we, you know, go about our lives and what we consider valuable, right? So if monetary policy is saying CBDCs are valuable, and they're saying these digital assets that help facilitate those CBDCs are valuable, and DLTs, then yeah, we're moving on with that for sure. So let's keep going on. Devil's in the details, yep. But he's also in the generalities. I mean, this devil guy works way too hard while God's just like laughing at him. He's like, dude, I have to do nothing, and I eventually win anyway. You get to just have fun doing all this stuff to try to act like you're going to win. And then you're just going to lose. Poor guy, man. This devil's everywhere and he still can't win. It's so sad. Like, this dude puts in the work. Dude, this guy goes like, you know, a lot of us work 12-hour days or whatever. This dude's going 24/7 and he still can't beat God. Like, it's poor dude, man. Like, just give up eventually, man. Just give up and stop. Like, but he can't. He's just so prideful. He's just so full of ego. He just thinks if he keeps going, he's going to eventually, you know, be able to beat him. Nope. Sorry. That's the end game. Sorry, dude. You can try all you want, but you're just gonna fail. It's like he's the Ouroboros, man. He just doesn't know when to stop. Poor thing, dude. Exhausting all of his energy. Instead, he could just sit back and enjoy life, man. But nope, he's gotta act like he's better than God, dude. Pray for knowledge, understanding, and discernment. Yeah, this is the devil's domain, nonetheless. Yeah, I mean, hey, he's everywhere, right? He's everywhere. And but what, you know, the light shines through ultimately. And a lot of people, you know, yeah. I mean, we can go into so many different things here, but we just know dude's just spending so much time, you know, fighting a battle he's going to eventually, or is losing, right? Maybe there's the illusion that it looks like he's winning, man, but at the end of the day, God's just sitting back and laughing at this fool, being like, dude, you were trying so hard. Like, I created you, you motherfucker. I created you, and you're trying so hard, and I'm just sitting back doing nothing. I'm just enjoying how my creation's playing out, because I'm kind of a little sick motherfucker. But at the end of the day, even if people are dying, they go back to this amazing, blissful light anyways, and maybe get reincarnated into something even better because they were just genuinely good people. They come back rich as hell, or, you know, amazing, or go into being angels, or just go into the ocean of the blissful light, which isn't too bad either. Which isn't too bad either. Not saying, you know, go out there and commit suicide, because then God goes like, okay, well, you obviously didn't enjoy the gift that I gave you or anything, or didn't try to overcome any obstacles or anything like that. Or I understand your situation and I see why you did end your life. You know, I'm sure, you know, he finds ways of where your energy goes after that. You either go into a better life, a worse life. You either become an animal to learn how to appreciate life more, and then you come back. You don't want to kill yourself next time. Whichever. You are your own worst enemy. No need to blame external fairy tales. There we go, Miles P. There we go. Truman Show is now. There we go. The 3 are 1. There we go. Amazing. Much love to the Blue Crew at the end of the day, y'all. Much love to the Green Giants. And, you know, it's just so good to be alive. Anytime you start talking about God and you start talking about the devil, it's just like, at the end of the day, I am just thankful to be alive. Thankful to be here talking with you hooligans, you crypto degens, and knowing about the future digital transition that is underway to help set us up to do really good things in the future, to really bring, you know, positive things and beautiful light to the world here, with, you know, all this knowledge that we're accumulating and hopefully sharing with each other and all that good stuff. You know, just much love to y'all, man. Always good times. We got Chainlink here, a new cross-chain era with Chainlink. And you got, it looks like they got the Chainlink logo on Twitter X here, which is interesting, right? So you got Arbitrum, right? Arbitrum's one to look into, I guess. Like, if you want to do a CCIP play, right, with the basket of currencies, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the CCIP play to look into for speculating in the next bull cycle, right? So we got Chainlink here. Chainlink's been killing it, right? Contemplating whether to add it back onto the Blue Crew list, because we did talk about this when it was in the deep reds. We did talk about this before it made a 27% gain up, right? We're not chasing the pump now. We were setting ourselves up here, right? Blue Crew can attest. We had this on the Blue Crew list. I felt bad about letting it go, but I was saying I'm not letting go in terms of my investment in Chainlink, and we're hammering away at that red, and we think it could kill it in the speculative bull cycle. That is for sure. So Chainlink doing some good things, man. 761. Maybe Chainlink starts this next bull cycle. Who knows? I mean, I'm not saying that it's gonna have the most gains, but it can maybe start it up. Who knows? Chainlink definitely doing its thing. Now up to 761. We were talking about this crypto around what, $6, $5 for Chainlink. So now that it's starting to show some signs of life, really, really good stuff. So you got Chainlink there. They mentioned Arbitrum, right? Never really got into ARB. I know a lot of people who are into ARB, and it's still a young gun in this space, right? It's only been around for what? It's not even a full year that Arbitrum is really, for so far as I know. Maybe it has been a full year. You could correct me. All-time high at 1164. 82 cents right now for Arbitrum. And it looks like Chainlink is still collaborating with them, or, sees them as an essential part for CCIP, cross-chain interoperability, right? You got Avalanche. AVAX is on our list, right? AVAX is going to be interoperable with a lot of platforms. Who are we kidding, right? So AVAX, definitely want to keep an eye out for. Ripple has offices to AVAX, right, as well as Polygon, Matic. I've noticed not a lot of people have been talking about Matic, like at all, right? It's like as if they forgot about Matic, right? And what this thing can do. 50-cent Matic. A lot of stuff built out during this bear cycle. I'm really liking Matic at around these ranges, to tell you the truth, guys. I think Matic is looking pretty fire at 50 cents, man. 292 all-time high. If we get an opportunity at around 30 cents or even 25-cent Polygon, I don't see it happening, but anything's possible. If we get those opportunities, man, I'm going to be hammering some Polygon. I feel like we're going into a speculative bull cycle, and what I love about speculative bull cycles, and I'm not saying this is the best strategy. It just, last bull cycle, I think it was having diversity, because, you were dealing with the reason this was the best strategy in the last bull cycle is because you were dealing with the SEC lawsuit and the delistings of XRP, right? So it was better to be diversifying in that last bull cycle and then cashing out on those cryptos that you diversified in and then putting them into XRP again. This might be a similar situation where low cap cryptos can maybe make some more gains than XRP is initially. But I think XRP is going to kill it during the speculative bull cycle. Don't get me wrong. I think it's going to kill it. But maybe there's some other cryptos that go up first and make some really big percentage gains first. Then we can be, sending some profits as well, adding into the XRP stacks. But at the end of the day, XRP is the one. Blue Castle, very, very close second. Very close second. Shout out to everybody tuning in. Much love, everybody. I mean, Satan's got to be real, dude. All this stuff has got to be real. The amount that these people talk and pay homage and everything to, especially the devil, obviously there's a lot of devotion to God, without a doubt. And, but like, in terms of like, oh, the devil's not real or whatever, or these are fairy tales, right? Once again, I've never seen like the devil in terms of like the cartoony aspect of it, the way that we've imagined it, right? Or that people imagine it. Maybe that thing is out there though. I haven't come across it myself. I've seen it referred to a bunch of times, right? But I haven't come across it myself. I'm a big personal experience dude in terms of like ultimate truth. Yes, faith is a really big part of life though. Faith is a thing that like drives you, right? For a lot of things, right? So faith is a big part of life, but I'm also a big part of, personal experience as well. Everybody already guessing the Blue Crew pairs. You guys are crazy, man. We still got some more news to go over. I'll try to go through it fast, guys. We've already been streaming for a good bit, and we got to get going. Ripple CLO expects a U.S. rep member to read XRP non-security status ruling during SEC chair testimony. We already heard about that, right? Great share to my recent keynote from Unchained Festival, where I discussed the Ripple CBDC and stablecoin platform, the differences from the XRP Ledger Public and the XRPL Private, and I also discussed the two recent use cases. So there you go, man. Dude, Anthony Welfare, busy bee this time of year, man. He's been going all over the place, educating people about Ripple CBDCs, man. Citi, our clients don't want a bank token. They want cross-border liquidity. Let's check this out really quick. Once again, guys, thanks for hitting the likes. Thanks to any new subs to the channel. We're trying to reach 4,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That would be amazing to have that type of bullishness before the bull cycle is even coming to be able to hit that goal. But we'll see where we're going. We stream here 10:30 a.m. daily PST, Monday through Saturday. And we'll see you guys on Extra Bullish Hour on Sundays and Crypto Coffee Time with Uncle Buster and Berserker on Sundays as well. And the XRP boardrooms on Tuesday. Yesterday's XRP boardroom was amazing. Good times with those guys. Shout out to Uncle Buster's channel. Let's check this out really quick.
For Citi token services for cash and for trade. So now what we can do is we can move tokenized deposits around cities, corridors. Right now it's just US and Singapore with aspirations of adding another 3 to 5 in the next near term. Well, it's great that we have this internal token, but our clients don't want a city token or another bank token. What they want is cross-bank, cross-border liquidity. So it's key that now that we have the infrastructure of the platform built internally, we work with like Regulated Liability Network and other participants about how do we solve these difficult issues as an industry. And there's still a lot of questions out there, but this FMI that RLN aspires to be is extremely positive because it for city.
And that's brilliant. That is so brilliant. They just want liquidity at the end of the day, and they can use a digital asset, a tool, a bridge for that liquidity, right? Gotta love it. All right, let's keep going. Oh yeah, and by the way, I was thinking about the other day, the question that Ripple doesn't need XRP, right? So far as we know, the only regulated assets in the US and globally, right, that have a global regulatory status are Bitcoin and XRP. And XRP more so than Bitcoin, in my opinion. So if Ripple were told that they cannot use XRP, I do not think the only other option that they could use for their projects, if they're using a digital asset, is Bitcoin. And we already know how slow Bitcoin is. If we're just looking at the current world of the way it is regulated right now, right? So the only two officially regulated, kind of considered store of value type of cryptos that you can use for digital payments and things like that are officially regulated to use for payments and products, XRP and BTC. So if Ripple were told that they can't use XRP, I don't think they would succeed without XRP, because then they would be forced to use BTC while other companies are using XRP, the faster payment, cheaper payment type of crypto. So that's the answer right there to Ripple doesn't need XRP to succeed. They can use another crypto. Somebody said like HBAR or Zinfin. There's no global regulatory clarity and US clarity for Zinfin and HBAR just yet. When we get global regulatory clarity for those digital assets, then we can amuse, yes, Ripple could succeed without XRP because it can use something else like HBAR and XDC. But so far as we know, the only options are BTC and XRP, and we want to use the faster, cheaper solution. So if Ripple wants to succeed and they like using digital assets in their payment products and their what they're providing to their customers, the only other option they would have outside of XRP is BTC, and that's not a good option. So no success. They need XRP to succeed. Let me see what else we got. Cross-border liquidity reminds me of what mentioned, and yeah, there we go. Interesting. Who had reptile eyes? Oh, by the way, guys, did you guys see that? Look at this. Look at what's trending for this Halloween season. Can you believe this, guys? Can you believe that this is here? Saw X. How many freaking X's do we need? How many pluses and X's do we need to keep seeing everywhere in the media, right? You got Saw X. Right? Did you guys see this? Did you guys see the trailer? Look at this. This is the poster. Is a literal freaking X sucking your eyes out. You won't believe your eyes when the X rises. When XRP rises, you won't believe your eyes. Like, hell, this could also be VR symbolism and all that type of stuff, right? But hilarious. This person has like this eye goggle thing that it looks like they're going to suck out their eyes or something, right? It's like pulling out their eyes, or there's like a bug that's going to go down those pipes into their eyes, whichever. It doesn't matter. Saw X. We thought it was the end of this freaking franchise, but no, they suck us back in with this freaking, and this is a big horror franchise, right? They use it for a lot of subliminal type of advertising because a lot of the masses are very aware of this horror franchise, right? So the Saw X series. You know what's another franchise that a lot of people are very familiar with that came out with the movie this year in 2023? You'll see. Oh yeah, and Twitter changing to X as well this year in 2023. How many subliminals do you guys freaking need, right? How many subliminals Do you guys need FastX came out this past May? This past May, the end of the road begins, right? That's what it says. And he's holding a cross in his hands. Like, how many freaking X's do you need to see? And then HBO Max turning into just Max, and at the end of that Max is X, right? Disney Plus, all this Plus stuff that we've been seeing, Play Plus, you name it, man. The rise of the X coins, XRP being mentioned. Hell, X.com, dude. X.com itself. So the X's are really strong this year. X's have been really strong this year. Let's see. Oh, okay. Chat's having their own thing going on in here. Yeah. 24, the number of the X. There we go. That is crazy, Sniff. Crazy, man. Yep. It did. It did. It did. Exactly, man. At the end of the day. Yeah, Sniff, it does look like there needs to be there's, excuse me, I got like some allergies acting up or something. Oh man, I wanted to sneeze there and I couldn't. But yeah, it seems like something like that happens, and then yeah, some global catalysts start happening soon after, for sure. All right, guys, let's go with let's continue going on with the news here. But good stuff nonetheless. Always good hanging out with you guys. Always good conversations. Let's see what else we got going on here. Yeah, this is interesting right here. So the DTCC, pay attention to this. It gets more convoluted, man. We think the DTCC is in bed with Chainlink and Ethereum, right? But there's former members of the DTCC, heads of the DTCC that are on Ripple's board of advisors. So then, now seeing Brian Steele. We are pleased to announce from the DTCC, we are pleased to announce Brian Steele as DTCC's new president of clearing and security services. A lot of this is going to fly over people's heads. A lot of this news is just flying over people's heads, right? There's a Ripple connection to this. There's a Ripple connection to this. So this guy's the new DTCC president, right? So maybe there's going to be a new way. Who knows? But we found this oldie but goodie. Check this out. This guy, Brian Steele, the new director, the new president for the DTCC. Check this out. Thanks to XRP chat on Reddit right here. Brian Steele had a convo with Danny Aranda. He was on the same panel with Danny Aranda right here on the far right. And Brian Steele, I think, is right here in the middle. Right? And so this guy starts dissecting the body language and the responses that Brian Steele has. And at the time, Brian Steele was MD at Goldman or something like that, right? MD Goldman. We have Danny Aranda from Ripple there. So Goldman, right here, Danny Aranda starts, or somebody asked him, talking about, what will this do for the macro perspective? In my opinion, it's going to create a thawing of liquidity unlike anything planet Earth has ever seen. And Brian Steele raises both eyebrows, tucks his mouth, and shakes his head in stern acknowledgement. These people have no idea what is coming, is basically indicating like that type of thought. And then Danny Aranda starts to talk about what kind of competitive risk is there or value add can you put to banks, let's say Swift. And then Brian Steele shaking his head in acknowledgement when the word Swift is mentioned, more so again when it's mentioned the second time. Brian clearly understands the paradigm of using Swift is about to change. Danny Aranda of Ripple says again, hey, you need a new infrastructure because customer demands are changing. And Brian Steele shakes his head in acknowledgement again. So Brian Steele here. So Brian Steele responds, we're not a member of R3. We're not a member of Hyperledger. We're not a member of, Enterprising Ethereum Alliance. This is odd. Brian mentions these extra entities that weren't even asked, but Ripple, which was just mentioned to him, should have still been fresh in his memory. He intentionally left it out. A clear deflection. Interesting. So, Brian Steele seems to know about what's going on here with, has at least been on the same panel with the Ripple representative back in 2018. Oldie but goodie. So another piece falling in place here with Brian Steele now being appointed as the new president for the DTCC. I think this is crypto friendly. What happens when you look at... I sneeze when I look at the sun. What happens when you look at the moon? It's the first day of Eurofinance International Treasury Management. Swift. Making everything frictionless. Sure. Good stuff, Swift. Good stuff. But nonetheless, guys, that's the news for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I think that Brian Steele thing is a pretty big move that I think is flying over the heads of people in crypto. DTCC already showing that they have collaborations with Ethereum and Chainlink, but maybe this opens up for more collaborations than we think now with this new president for the DTCC, a new guard, right? Let's see what ends up happening with this. Nonetheless, let's go into our DLTalk or GDLT giveaway. We're doing one GDLT giveaway today because Sniff decided to take the money and run just yesterday. Shout out to Sniff. Hey, man, you got to get what you got to get. That is for sure. You got to get what you got to get. Hey, man, EWT doing some good stuff in the past 24 hours. Once again, the deep reds are the same deep reds that have been for a good bit. EWT making a good run, though. You got to love it. But XX Network at 7 cents. We may get that 5-cent journey coming soon. Algo, EWT, AVAX, and SHX. Those 5, man, hammering away at those cryptos for the deep reds. But our Blue Crew top 10 is XRP, Avalanche, XLM, HBAR, QNT, Algo, XDC, EWT, XX Network, and SHX. Which of these two am I thinking about, guys? Which of these two cryptos am I thinking about for one GDLT token? I know we're going to roll it anyway. Maybe not, though. Maybe somebody runs away with the one token. We'll see. Go. Which of these two am I thinking about? You got to name the two cryptos. Appreciate you, 23, tuning in, by the way. Always good to have a gray in the chat. The grays are welcome to the Blue Island, without a doubt. So far, no dice. Let's go, guys. Let's go. Did I pick a good one today? Somehow, though, like Sniff or Legendary is going to get it. Either the Green Giant's going to scoop it from the sky or, I mean, so far, no dice, though. Okay, we picked a pretty good one. I'm pretty proud of this one. Thanks, Gary. No, it's not Bitcoin and ETH, my dude. They are not on our Blue Crew top 10. I've been considering adding Bitcoin on there, man. At the end of the day, if it's a regulated crypto and it's like this if it's a collector's item, I like it. But I think there's just more value to be made from these small caps, especially XRP that can do everything Bitcoin can and then some, right? Man, you guys got me talking about other cryptos right now. Like, that's how bad your guesses are right now, you guys. What's going on? Guys? All right, I think I might have to start. I might have to start cutting some down. Nope, not Doge and Shiba, my dude. Not Doge and Shiba. Even though those will probably kill it in this next speculative bull cycle. I might even throw like $10 at Doge and Shiba just to see what that $10 will do in the next speculative bull cycle. If it turns into 1,000, that would be upset, like over the top. No joke, man. No joke. Why not, dude? If we're going on another speculative bull cycle, I'm just going to sprinkle little seeds out there with money that I can afford to lose and just see what ends up happening. Play it like a little game. Guys, okay, we got to start giving some people some clues here. It's not XRP. It's not XLM. It's not SHX. It's not Algo. It's not XX. It's not EWT. It's not XDC. What do we have left? What do we have left? It's not AVAX. Yep, there you go. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Gary. Got it. Quant and H-bar. QNT and H-bar. Congratulations. Thanks, Gary. 1 GDLT token. What would you like to do with it, though, man? What would you like to do with it? Do you want to roll it? Oh, he's saying rolling it. Oh, man. Thank you so much, my dude. Shout out to Thanks, Gary. Of course. His name's Thanks, Gary. He's just used to hearing thanks coming his way, man. Thank you, Gary. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate you, man. I'm going to keep trying if you guys keep trying. Let's keep rocking and rolling here, guys.
I'm going to keep trying if you guys keep trying. Let's keep rocking and rolling, man. I'm going to keep trying if you guys keep trying. Let's keep rocking and rolling, man.
There we go. There we go. That we had to play it without the speaker. We didn't want any like double feedback on that one. But yeah, we were able to finally elongate it. I'm going to keep trying if you guys keep trying. That movie's so absurd, man. That movie's about a freaking rise and fall of a porn star, man. It's so absurd. So absurd. Keep on keeping on. Exactly, man. I'm going to keep trying if you guys keep trying. Let's keep rocking and rolling. And guys, we forgot to talk about the, you know, I'm so grateful to have everybody here, and we found some amazing shit today, man. We found some amazing shit today.
I mean, man, we found some amazing shit out there today. I mean, the kind of shit I didn't think you could find in the trash, you know? I mean, man, we found some
amazing shit, man. We found some amazing shit today. Started off as a little poopy, though, with the Gary stuff earlier, but we came around. Guys, appreciate everybody tuning in. Is the GDLT going to be used on the Ledger City game? Oh, hey, if we could find a way for it to be used in Ledger City, that would be amazing, Ricky Bustamante. Actually, dude, you know what, Blue Crew? I think we could do this. I'm going to try to contact Mo Morrissey, but he did say he wanted to do another interview closer to when they're, you know, bringing up the newer developments. So, you know, I think Mo Morrissey and I will have another interview on stream here in the future, and that's going to be amazing. Without a doubt. And hopefully my laptop doesn't freaking, you know, shut itself down during that interview, because we already know that it has a history of doing that midstream, and that would suck. But anyways, much love to everybody tuning in. Shout out to the Blue Crew. Shout out to the Green Giants. And of course, the Ledger Citizens and you Grays out there from out yonder. Appreciate the Grays. Always grateful. The future is distributed ledger technology, and the future is bright. Our future is bright. I'll see you guys in the next one. We got the eye of the tiger. We keep it crypto. Thanks for hitting the likes. Thanks for any new subs. All that good stuff. Adios.
Look at the moon.
Oh my god, this is definitely not normal.